Our week started off pretty good. I managed to stay off of Facebook Marketplace. We didn't chase any phantom cars or anything.
But short way into it, we spent a whole day recording and discovered that the mic wasn't plugged in, so we had absolutely no audio. Fortunately, with some creative editing, we were able to make it work.
We're gonna pick up where we left off last week with the front cross member in the truck here. And the only thing I've done off camera is I went ahead and pulled the brake lines off. I've been putting that off because I don't know if you know it or not, but brake fluid is flammable. And cutting and welding, I just figured it'd be easier to work around them than it would be to deal with the mess of the brake fluid everywhere. Turns out I have to change the brake hoses anyway, so I got to take them off. I went ahead and drained the system and got all the brake fluid cleaned up, so hopefully we don't have any fires. And we're going to upgrade our safety this week.
Just in case.
We got the plate all put in on the end of our cross member here and got our cross member all reshaped. And I ground it down. There's still a couple little holes here. They're not really holes, they're just depressions from the penetration of the weld. I don't want to grind this anymore because I don't want to grind all of the strength of the weld out. I'm just knocking the high spots off where it was really built up. I'm getting a little better at the arc welding, but it's still not great. I switched to 7018 and it has a lot less of the slag or the little metal splatter that goes everywhere, but I can't get nearly as pretty of a weld as I was getting with the, I was getting some pretty decent looking welds with the 6013, with the 7018. They don't look as good, but I don't have near as much splatter to clean up, so I think I'm gonna go with that. I absolutely cannot get the 7018 to weld overhead on the bottom though, so I had to do that with 6013. But now it's time to go ahead and get the other side all done, and we will probably just cut right to the end of that, or maybe show a little bit of B-roll as we're doing it. I feel like a beat dog. It is so hot in this garage. But we got our second side all done and a little bit of paint sprayed in there. The second side went a lot better than the first side. I'm a lot happy with how it turned out, but I'm not cutting the first one off to redo it. So now we're gonna move these jack stands and set the engine back in there just to see where the oil pan goes so we can make the brackets and build a cross member. So at this point, my daughter, have you guys heard of Flaming Hot Mountain Dew? Like the Flaming Hot Cheeto flavor in Mountain Dew? I hadn't. I can't even imagine why somebody thought that was a good idea. But my daughter thought it'd be a good idea to try it. So we took a break and we tried it.
It didn't turn out to be quite as funny as we thought it would be because it didn't taste terrible, but she managed to make it interesting. Kind of like got a little bit of the burn of whiskey, but it tastes like Mountain Dew.
It tastes like Mountain Dew with hot Cheetos on your breath.
It fills your mouth with air. I don't know if that's what.
I don't think that's a thing, Faith.
Have you ever had a drink fill your mouth with air?
At the end of that day, I was wiped out and fell asleep super early and woke up at midnight, completely rested and ready to go to work. Well, obviously nobody else was ready to go to work. So I came out here and worked by myself while it was cool outside. Unfortunately, I'm not as good at the camera as she is, so you'll have to bear with the footage. This is what we're gonna use for a cross member. This is the cross member. This is the mount. It's gonna go on there like that. This piece gets welded to the suspension on one side. I'll make another one. It'll get welded to the suspension on the other side. And then once we have this all in there, while it's still in its current condition with everything where I want it, I'll drill 2 holes here and 2 holes in this one, and we'll just through bolt this, and I'll add a spacer in here to keep this from collapsing when we tighten it down. That'll be our cross member. I'm gonna make another one of these and we'll get this set in there. Okay, sorry guys. It is currently 4:30 in the morning. Amber is sleeping, and I forgot to move the camera over there when I was bending this. But I just put it in my press brake and bent a U on the marks. Really not that exciting. Now that you can see it's sitting in there, I got the jack holding it roughly in place. I have to just verify that the height is good, and then we'll go ahead and get those side pieces tacked in. I think after this is tacked in, I'm gonna bevel the edges of this a little bit just to make it look a little nicer, and then maybe weld in some, I'm gonna weld some gussets in, but I might weld a gusset on the back side as well. Now we will get the positioning just right and go ahead and tack this thing in there. Okay, I don't think I'm gonna be able to weld that with the engine in there. So we're going to pull the cross member down, pull the engine out, and weld everything. Then we'll put the engine back in. I'm getting tired of pulling this engine in and out. We'll put the engine back in and drill our holes. Okay, I have a quick tip for you guys. I'm making the gussets for my frame there, but they need to come over 3 inches and then angle up to the very tip of that point. I need the 90 in this corner. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my square and I'm gonna put that at 3 inches. I'm gonna put that right through that corner up there, just like that, and now I know where I need to cut this. All right, so I got these about half welded in before I realized the camera wasn't over here. I don't know how well you're gonna be able to see, but the right side is almost welded. No. Well, the right side of the truck, left side of the screen, and the right side of the screen, left side of the truck has the top and the bottom welded. I gotta finish welding the sides up. We got the crossmember done. I am really happy with how it turned out. I'm gonna be honest, the welds leave a little to be desired. They're not the prettiest things, but they're gonna hold, and that's what we're going for. I really wouldn't have taken this on if I had realized how bad I was gonna be at arc welding. I would have waited till I had a MIG welder to do all this. But once you start, you can't stop, so it's done now. I had the engine back in to get all the spacing back to where it needed to be, because the engine was put in with the old crossmember intact, so that should hold everything back to where it was supposed to be. And I also had a measurement on the width of what I cut out. So I got it back to where it was, and I tacked in those U-channel pieces, and then I unfortunately had to pull the motor out to weld everything, and then I put the motor back in. And then once I had the motor back in, I drilled 4 holes, 2 on each side, half-inch holes that are actually going to bolt that crossmember into those U-channel pieces that we made. While I had the motor out, I went ahead and added a couple of gussets on the top of those U-channel pieces up into that plate on the end of the old crossmember, just to make everything nice and rigid. I'm really happy at how it turned out. Amber will give you a look at it. Like I said, the welds are not the prettiest, but if you remember right, when we started, this piece here angled out, came out about 3 inches and went across the front here. We cut all that back, narrowed everything down. You know, the weight is one thing, but this gives us a lot more openness in our engine bay here for things that could be in the future, like if we tried to do rack and pinion steering or something like that. All that bulky crossmember was going to do is be in the way of all that stuff. So now it's out. We have kind of a minimalist crossmember that can be unbolted if we ever need it to pull the oil pan or something. I don't think we'll have to unbolt the crossmember to pull the oil pan in this truck now, but if we have to, we can. So now the only thing left on the front end is we're going to get it wiped down with lacquer thinner, acetone, or brake cleaner, or whatever I can find, and we're going to get it all painted. We're painting it semi-gloss black, and then once this is all painted, we're going to clean up the firewall, make a couple of patches to fill in some holes, and then we're going to paint the firewall. Now that we've got the front end of the truck all painted, or the front frame rails of the truck all painted, I'm really happy with how it turned out. I'll be honest, it's not my preferred method. I like to take stuff apart, paint individual pieces, let it dry real good, then put it back together. I just feel like it turns out better and you get a better paint job that way, but not in the cards for this one. So we went ahead and pushed the truck outside and took care of the surface rust on the inside of the cab on the floor where we took the rubber floor mat out. That's going to be a whole separate video. If you haven't seen it already, we'll put the link somewhere for using the PR15 on the rusty floors. Now we're ready to go ahead and start working on the firewall. I know I keep saying that, but we're actually going to do it this time. We got to cut a patch or a plate or whatever to cover that hole where the heater box used to be, and then go ahead and get this prepped, pull the wiper motor off, I'll probably pull the throttle cable out, and get the firewall painted and change that torque converter seal so we can finally put the engine back in for the last time this time. Well, there's more than one way to use a vise to hold metal. We're going to use silicone, 100% silicone, to seal this up to the firewall. And I found this at Rule King, I guess. And I really like this stuff. And I've never used it before, but the reason I really like it is because the tip unscrews. And it's inevitable. You buy silicone and you don't use it for a week or so, and the tip is completely full of dried silicone. So you end up cutting a little more, cutting a little more, cutting a little more. Before long, it's cut all the way down here. You still have half a thing of silicone left, and then it starts hardening in the tube. This one, you can leave your small cut, take this off, push the piece of silicone out, and it comes with a cap too. I don't think that's going to stop it from hardening in there, but at least you can get it off and clean it out and keep the small hole. We're getting ready to set the engine back in, and I'm going to put the brake lines on before I set the engine back in, but I just wanted to show you guys something that this is not leaking, but I think we're going to replace that because, whoa, it's right here, and I don't know how long that's not going to be leaking. So we got some new ones. We're going to put those on real quick. We're putting the motor back in, and so I've been using these bolts to mock everything up. They're too short, so the nut doesn't even go all the way through. My intention was I'll just use these longer bolts. They're an inch longer. Well, these bolts are too long, they hit the headers. I can't put them in from the backside, well, because of the headers. So we're gonna cut one off. And I just wanted to show you guys a quick little tip that works pretty well for me. If you gotta cut something off, you put a nut on first, then cut it off. When you pull the nut off, it'll fix the threads. Once we had the motor back installed and the front end pretty well wrapped up, we decided to do something easy. I'm gonna take the leaf springs apart in order to pull out an extra like helper leaf and then also an overload spring. The overload spring we're never gonna use because this truck's never gonna haul a load again. And the helper leaf, we don't need that extra weight capacity because we're not hauling anything. And the softer the rear springs are, the better it can get up on the back tires and hopefully not have traction problems. We're not experiencing traction problems yet, but I see it coming. So this was a good time. It's weight loss. We went ahead and do that. Well, it should have been as straightforward as take the center bolt out, pull the clamps off, and then I went ahead and cleaned everything up and painted it so it was nicer looking. Basically reassemble the leaf springs and move a clamp from the back to the front, tighten everything back down. It did go that way. The U-bolts were a disaster. Sometimes you have to use a heat wrench or a grinding tool to get U-bolts out, which is going to be the case here. The spring clamps that I was trying to transfer from the back to the front, they broke, or one of them broke. The centering bolts didn't work right, so I had to modify those. It actually turned into 2 days of complete frustration. What I was thinking was going to be a couple hours of an easy job, and it was frustrating. It was a frustrating end to a frustrating week. We went ahead and ordered some U-bolt style leaf spring clamps since the factory ones are not going to be able to be salvaged.
Hopefully next week is a lot easier than this week was.
See you soon.